Yes, I am Andrew Nunez. I'm pastor of Believers Mennonite Garifuna Ministry in New York. Um, I born in Dangriga, the best place in the whole world. And anybody that doesn't born there, well, you miss it. But
Mhm.
I grew up in Dangriga. I do my parents. They are Garifuna. That's what I get to know. That my mother is Garifuna, and I'm very proud of my mother's. Her name is Amy Bonillo, and my father is Jan Nunez. Both of them are deceased. My journey as coming up, I learned to go to different churches by different people. My aunt she used to go to 7 Days Adventist, and one of my aunt goes to we call it Jehovah Witnesses.
Mhm.
And so my spiritual was I also grew up in that, and I was going to Methodist school, and so I learned a lot about God. Every Friday, we go to the church, and the priest or the pastor, um, they will give stories or talk about the Bible. So that was Mandeli, and
Mhm.
which is so good at that time. And as coming up, I learned, and one of my friend invited me to the Baptist church. We were classmates, and that was 1990. I mean 1977, and so I went there on a Friday night. It was a youth service. So from there, we talk about accepting Christ as a personal Lord and Savior. And I did say yes. And, and from that day, I started to go to church ever since then at the age of 13. When I was about 13, between 11 and 12, I heard the voice of God, so to speak, um, told me about I need to reach out to the Garifuna community, or you know, he just used the word promoting Garifuna. That's I know about that word at that time. But then as
Mhm.
I grow up, I get to understand certain terminology, such as reaching out, promoting the Garifuna community, uplift them in many areas possible. And so and that's when I think like the Spirit of God just told me that. And ever since then, that was on my mind. I went to the church, and because I didn't see much Garifuna in our church in Dangriga, uh,
Mhm.
because Garifuna was considered as somebody off track or whatever they consider them. But it was a some concern for me not to see them in the churches. Only Roman Catholic Church we might probably see them. So that was a concern for me as well. Um, so And when I get here to United States, I met two of my friends. Well, I'll consider two of my friends. Reverend Frank Enriquez, somebody might know him. He used to be the pastor of Nazarene Church in Belize, and he was a very instrumental person there in the town of Dangriga, and as well, very influential person in my life as well. Um, so I met him and Stephen Garcia. So when I arrived, 1 week after I arrived, or within a week after I arrived, we met. I'm like, oh, I never know that these guys, we could meet up to each other for after mix of years.
Mhm.
And so Stephen Garcia told me, say, we are here to work with the Garifuna people,
Mhm.
work in building up Garifuna churches in here in New York. I say, okay, good. So we carry on from there. Um, I was working at the Baptist church as with the young people. So Pastor Stephen Garcia was about to resign, and he requested my for me to carry on with the ministry in East New York and Bushwick. Uh,
Mhm.
So I was installed as a pastor. We call it. That's the word we call. And being a pastor, X amount of years, and then I was ordained as a pastor or reverend or whatever angle we may call him. But thank God for that. Then I went to I after a year of my installation, I spoke to my bishop and said I need to work. I believe God is telling me to work with the Garifuna people and to commit myself to the Garifuna people. He said, whatever God wants you to do, then just do as it. And so I started to work with because our church used to name believers Mennonite Fellowship. And the pastor told me that we are here to work with the Garifuna people. So now the thing is that where does Garifuna come in here? And this is our mission and a purpose of existence. And so I started to rename it in 1993 from Believers Mennonite Fellowship. I just took off the fellowship and add Garifuna Ministries. And that name becomes a little controversial. Like in Belize, Mennonite as those white people and those were the buggies, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the kind of way we know them. Um, but that's not what it is. Mennonite is basically a belief, stand for human rights, justice, family, and stand a lot for peace. So it's to avoid things that separate us, to put it aside and focus on things that unite us. And one of the things that unite us, we as Garifuna, we are loving, we are kind people, we are passionate about one another. That's our parents have taught us, and to look out for one another. And I had an interview with Mr. Roy Caetano. Um, I told him I want to know much about Garifuna spirituality and stuff because I'm interested to know about, because I don't know much about the Garifuna spirituality. I don't know much about this stuff, but I want to learn and
Mm-hmm.
understand now what this have to do between God and this stuff. But he mentioned something to me very important that I was never gonna forget it. Probably he been saying that over and over, but I didn't get it until this time. And he said that one of the motto of the Garifuna spirituality is that I for you, you for me, we are for one another, you know, and we are looking for one. That was very important to me because that's one of the things that I hold on to when the verses, that's why it motivate me a lot more. When Jesus prayed and said, Father, let them be one as we are one. God is about oneness. Oneness doesn't mean that you wear the same uniform like me. It doesn't mean that you go to the same school like me. It doesn't mean that you all have the same religion, whatever it is. But the oneness that we have is a caring for one another and caring for our community. And I think that's one I think that um, T. Ramos again was very instrumental by hearing the story of T. Ramos, how he was a visionary man and he persists and persists and persists to now we have a lot of Garifuna freedom in this community. So generally, I know I was young. I make a lot of stupid mistakes, or so to speak, but those are not mistakes. Those are things that we have in our time. And I realized that, you know what, I could have done different if I have to live it over. Um, so even coming on with our upcoming, with our parents trying to discourage us to achieve some of our goals because they cannot do it, they feel like it can be done. And so I have seen a lot of young people, and my passion for them is for them to be themselves, learn to understand who they are, and able to make a difference in the community regardless of where part you're from, what their background might be, where you can make a difference. And so I learned that young people are passionate about changing the future or work along with the future. In my time in the 60s, things was changing. So most of we are Garifunas, but our community was dominant by Creole and Spanish, um, whereby that in that sense we got to speak English in our church. I mean, our school, at our church, and many places. English was dominant that coming at that time. So my grandmother was speaking a little bit more English because she was more into Garifuna because that's where they come from. And as a young person, I learned to adapt to anyone. I learned to respect people for who they are. It doesn't matter if you're Creole, Spanish, or whatever. And so, but the challenges coming is to understanding the language barrier. I I was proud to be a Garifuna, but I was ashamed because I don't know the language. Not that I'm ashamed to be a Garifuna, I'm proud to be a Garifuna. But they say, oh, say something Garifuna, like, I don't know about that. So it was very challenging, and there wasn't material out available to learn Garifuna. It wasn't encouraged. So if you're not learning at home, you're not going to learn outside. And and then we look at the Garifuna culture in a different perspective. People are looking down, oh, because you're a Garifuna now, you must have to deal with, they know them as voodoo people or witchcraft or whatever. And so that's sort of kind of an image that it was out. But that didn't affect my coming up as a young man. I was careful of my environment, which and respectful of my elders and and young and old. So I enjoy my youth. Yes, I'm very excited. I used to go to Honduras. Thank God for that. Since 1995. I've been going back and forth every year to Belize and go to Honduras for the past 5 years or so. I spend more time in Belize, but I say when I go to Honduras, I'm going to learn at least one word in Garifuna so that I could learn. So I'll be coming back and forth, but I learned several words relating to that. The Bible, um, when I started going to Honduras and we see the Garifuna, people were dying now. The language wasn't there. And when I was going to Nazarene Church, there was a lady there, Miss Mackay. She's Rudy Mackay mother. And there was a songbook, a thin slang book, and there was Garifuna songs. It was look good. I didn't know it or whatever. And one day I took some of those books when I bring it to the States, and I gave one to James Lavelle, and he was a musician, so he like wow, you know, he was treasuring it, and Mr. Palacio also was passing some books to him, and it was in Garifuna. So when I came to Honduras, they were doing something. They were translating the Bible from English into Garifuna, the whole Bible, the Old Testament. Because I already have done the New Testament. We never were able to read that. But today I can speak a lot in Garifuna, and I can preach in Garifuna, I can pray in Garifuna, and I'm still challenging reading Garifuna. So I'm still working on that on my end because I believe that we can learn how to speak and read in our language. But does that we don't have the practice that we should. In our church, every second Sunday of the month, we have Garifuna service at 23 Marcus Garvey at 3 o'clock. Every second Sunday I have a pastor who is into Garifuna. He was one of the guys that was a part of the translation of the Garifuna Bible, and also on tape. So is John Arzu, and he's one of my assistant pastor there. And so that's what he's responsible to make sure we have the Garifuna service going on every second Sunday of the month.